Hi guys, it's time to do another ranking video, and yet again, like always, I feel like it's gotten way out of hand. So I have a little thing here of the last palettes that I haven't ranked yet, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, I think, which is more than I usually prefer to rank, but here we are. So that's what we're gonna go ahead and do. I'm gonna rank all of these palettes, let you know how I feel about them, let you know if my thoughts have changed since the first time I used them, if I did a first impression video on them. But most of these palettes I've used more than once, and I've had quite some time to sort of play with this palette, and some I've even brought traveling with me. So I have thoughts on all of these, so we're just gonna go ahead and get into it. We're gonna start on the bottom, and I will share with you all of the last 15 or 16 or however many palettes it is that I have in here that I've tried lately. So let's start on the bottom. Let me make sure I know how many palettes I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. I could not count the first time because I actually have two quite small palettes in here that sort of just, they disappeared in my bunch. So that is why. We're going to start on the bottom. And this is a palette that I received in PR from Colourpop. It's the Pretty Please palette, and I don't think there is necessarily anything wrong with this quality, but this color story is just so boring to me. Like, this is not a palette that I can ever see myself using again. Like, I like a good neutral look. I like something that's not super, you know, colorful these days, but I still want there to be something special about the palette, and I don't find that this was anything special at all, and that's just a personal preference thing. I like the look I did with it. I didn't have any problems with it per se, but it's just not a palette that I see myself reaching for again. So these rankings are sort of all over the place in my kind of thoughts on where the certain palettes end up. It's just a matter of, number one, preference, also color story, and also just like what I'm feeling right now, because I don't always want to use the same kind of makeup all the time, and like I feel like my preferences change all the time. So that's just kind of where I'm at right now. The next palette is actually also one from Colourpop, and I know a lot of people love this palette, but I did two looks with this. It's the Aurora Struck palette, and I just could not get along with this quality. I struggled so much with not just the mattes, but the shimmers as well. Some of these shimmers, I don't know if it's their new kind of glittery formula, but I hated it. I thought it was so dry, so hard pressed in the pan. It was so hard to work with, and I just didn't feel like there was anything really special about any of these shades that I don't have in better formulas and other palettes. I will say this blue is really nice, but I struggled to build this blue on top. I had a ton of fallout. It wouldn't build. It was patchy on me. And I was going to do more looks with it than I did, but I just didn't want to. I feel like the fact that I didn't want to do an extra look with that palette says everything you need to know. So I didn't enjoy it. Like, I know I've seen a lot of good reviews on it, and I'm happy people like it, but I'm just not one of those people. The next palette here is a palette that I'm sad ended up as low as it did, because this is the Claws palette from Menagerie. And I love cats. You guys know that. Churro, my cat, is my baby. I love him to death, and I really wanted to love this kitty palette, but there is something about this color story that I just don't really understand it. I feel like the shimmers are very repetitive in that we basically have 3 pink shimmers and then sort of a pinky purpley shimmer as well, and then this green, I don't really know how that goes with the rest of the palette, and this gray, I'm like, what do I do with this? And I just don't really get along with this color story. I don't feel like it's very versatile. I can't think of a lot of looks that I want to do with this without feeling like it's just a little bit off. So for that reason alone, even though the quality is nice, I just couldn't rank it any higher. And I feel like the same goes for this palette as well. This is the Daily Grind palette from Unearthly. I have to admit that the look that I did with this palette is one of my favorite looks that I've ever done, but I also think that this is a very kind of one-trick pony. There's only so much you can do with this. And again, the matte selection is very strange. It's all very repetitive. Like, if you took out those 2 greens, like, these all look very, very similar. And there's not a lot of variation in the mattes. Like, there were 3. Why do we need 3 orange shimmers? Like, we could do 2 and then maybe do 2 green mattes. Like, that would make way more sense. And I just feel like they could have done something a little bit different with this. I don't think there's anything wrong with the quality. I just don't really get along with this color story, and it's not something that really excites me. The next palette here, I struggled so much where to put this palette, because I really, really liked the looks that I did with this, but I also don't really see myself reaching for this palette again. And I think number one, it has to do with the packaging. This is not a quality issue at all. This is a new Nomad palette. So it's a Verona palette. This is the one that they came out with for the holidays, and not the holidays, Valentine's Day. And I just don't like this double flap thing. I find it to be quite annoying, if I'm being honest. And I get what they wanted to do, but it's just not that practical, and it's kind of tough to use. It takes up a lot of space on your desk, and I'm not a fan. I really like the color story on this side, but this side I could take it or leave it. Like, I have this 1,000 times over in my collection, and I don't think there's anything special with any of these shades. This one is very, very hard pressed, tough to work with in my opinion, and I find that a lot of the shimmers in here are that very hard-pressed formula that I don't love from Nomad. I know they can do looser formulas that I like more, but I will say the lasting power on the shimmers are beautiful. They wear so nicely, and it's almost worth the hassle of getting them on your eyes in order to get like a really nice wear time out of them, because they do look really nice once you get them on the eyes. But I feel like Nomad's shimmers are a little too high maintenance for me to want to reach for them on days where I'm not filming, because I just have other things that I like to work with shimmer wise more than the Nomad ones. So I just don't really see myself wanting to reach for that palette again, which is sad because it's a beautiful palette, but I have so much makeup. And for me to, or for the makeup to make the cut for me to want to use it when I'm not filming, it needs to be really, really good, and I don't want to be playing with things that I would rather play with something else. Does that make sense? I hope so. The next palette here is one that I haven't done a dedicated video on, but I have featured it in my makeup diaries, which has probably not gone up yet, but I used this palette yesterday for the first time, and this is the Spellbound Beauty, what is this called? Heart Killer palette. This is their Valentine's release, and even though this is a very neutral color story, there are 3 of those absolutely gorgeous shimmers that I just absolutely love. So these 3 shimmers here basically make this palette rank very high, and also I thought the mattes were really nice. The wear time on these shimmers, beautiful. I wore it all day yesterday for probably 13 hours, and usually these kind of shimmers will crease really badly on me, and the shimmers in their previous palette creased a little bit on me, but these are perfect. I love them so much, and I really like the performance of the mattes that I use as well. I only used like the 3 neutral mattes, and I used this one on my lid, and it was really nice. This is one that I can actually see myself dipping into again, mostly for the shimmers, but also because the mattes were nice, and if I just want like a simple neutral crease, I could see myself using these. I thought they were nice. Yeah, not like the most exciting palette color story wise, but if I feel myself wanting to use it over the other things that ended up lower, it means that I need to rank it higher, right? So that's just kind of where that ended up. The next palette here is one that I really like. This palette. I like this palette a lot. And this is the new or kind of redone palette from Menagerie. This is the Killer Purr palette. So this is the revamped Killer Purr palette. And I've played with this a few times now, and I just think that this is so nice. Like, I really like the color story of this palette more than I did when it first launched, and now that they kind of changed it up a little bit, I like it even more. So I feel like this is very much my aesthetic right now. I do wish that maybe these 2 shimmers weren't so similar. Maybe we could have switched out one of these with something else just to make it a little more versatile. But again, that's just nitpicking, and I think this palette is beautiful, and I'm really happy that I bought it and that I have it in my collection again, because I have decluttered my old Killer Purr, because honestly, it was just kind of old, and I feel like Menagerie is not a brand that ages as well as some other brands. Some of their older palettes I actually ended up decluttering in my last declutter because they didn't feel as creamy and smooth as they once did. And to be fair, the palettes I had from Menagerie from like years ago were probably like 4 years, so it was probably about time. The next palette here is going to be another palette from Menagerie. I literally just switched to 2 palettes I had in front of me because I just felt like it was fitting. This is the Pause palette. I like the Pause palette more than I like the Claws palette, and mostly just because of the color story. I feel like I can do more with this. This is similar to the look I have in my eyes today, which I actually don't have the palette that I'm using today in this ranking because I'm not done reviewing it yet, but I'm using the new palette from It's Belle Cosmetics, but I'm still gonna do another look with that, and I'm using a single multi-chrome from Shall We Makeup. I'll talk about that in an upcoming video. I'm not sure which of these are going up first, but you'll see it at some point. But I really like this palette. I think this color story makes so much more sense than the Claws palette, so I'm happy that I bought both of them, and I'm surprised that I ended up liking this one more than the Claws, like I said. But I think they're both good quality. I'm just not as into the color story of the other one as I am this one. The next one is the Unearthly Cosmetics Dead of Night palette, which looks like this. And when I was kind of trying to rank these and I had this one in front of me, it just wasn't a palette that I was like, oh yeah, I can't wait to use this one again. I don't know what it is about it. It's hard for me to explain why I'm not like jiving with this color story at this moment. I think it is beautiful. I do think maybe it's because I wish there were some lighter shimmers in here, and maybe is leaning a little too dark for me in that sense. Like this is a very dark shade, this is a very dark shade. This definitely has more of a like a black base to it, and even though this sort of gunmetal gray shade is still leaning a little too dark for me, I just, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I just don't really feel like using this again right now, but it's a beautiful palette, beautiful color story, beautiful quality. Don't really have any complaints other than I just don't feel like doing another look with it. The next palette is one that I really do want to do another look with, and this is the Envy palette from Ace Beauty. This is a beautiful color story. I really enjoy this a lot. I like that it goes from very dark to very light in both the shimmers and the mattes. Maybe not like super light in the mattes, but light enough that I feel like I don't need a transition shade with this palette. And I feel like this shade is light enough to be used with pretty much all of these mattes. And I think the color story is just really pretty, and it's inspiring, and it makes me want to use it again. The next palette is probably my favorite palette, well, one of my favorite palettes from this brand, and this is the new palette from Lethal. I actually don't know the name of this because they never put their names on their palettes, and I've forgotten the name. But I think this is really pretty. I love the shimmers in this. I love the mattes in this. I do think that maybe it's a little repetitive and a little too kind of just green, but I do think that there are a lot of things you can do with this, and I really like the looks that I ended up doing, and I'm happy I have it in my collection, and I can definitely see myself using this again because it's a beautiful palette, and this shade is so pretty, and this shade is so pretty too. Like these are beautiful on the eyes, like really, really pretty. So happy I have this one in my collection. The next palette is the other palette from Ace Beauty that came out at the same time as the Envy palette, and this is the Aura palette. Now, a few years back, I probably would have switched the order on these two, but I really enjoy the combination of the purples and the neutrals. I feel like this kind of just makes sense to me, and there's more that I want to explore with this palette. And because I looked at this and I was like, ooh, I want to use this again, it ended up higher than the other one. And I just think this is really pretty, and you can do some very, very simple but still beautiful looks with this that doesn't take like a ton of time, and it's just going to be easy to do. So we're going to move into the top 5, and some of these might be a surprise, some of these might not. I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. This one I do think is going to be a little bit of a surprise. If you saw my last Makeup Diaries, you'll see that I brought this palette traveling with me because I really wanted to play a little bit more with this because I had a really good experience when I did my multiple look video with this palette, and this is the Nimia palette. So this is the palette from Nikki Tutorials, and as you can tell, quite a neutral palette, but the formulas in here are beautiful. Like there's something so effortless and sophisticated but still fun and beautiful, and the shimmers are just like really nice and sparkly, and even though they're not the most metallic, they just look really nice on the eyes. I love the mattes in this. I think that the neutral mattes especially, also this orange is insane. Like one of the most intense orange shadows I've ever used. It is literally like a neon shadow on the eyes. It is so pretty. Like I don't know why I like this palette as much as I do, but I really enjoy this, and I'm surprised at how much I like it, and I still want to keep using it because I think the quality is really, really nice. The next palette here is a quad, and I was toying with the idea of not putting like this quad and the other 6 pan that I have in this video, but at the end of the day, it is an eyeshadow palette because it does have 4 shades in it, and it's the Trove quad from Blend Bunny. This is the multi-chrome quad that they came out with. These are amazing quality. They're beautiful eyeshadows. They wear very well for being black-based multi-chromes on me, and I can see myself bringing these traveling with me if I want to bring like special shades. I think they're so pretty. I feel like I'd be way more comfortable bringing something like this than bringing some of my Cleona shadows traveling, because those are singles, and traveling with singles just make me terrified, because I've broken singles while traveling before, and even though I always want to bring like special shades when I travel, I'm scared that I'm going to break them, and I'm not scared I'm going to break these, because I feel like everything that I have from Blend Bunny just feels like sturdy quality that's not going to just fall apart if it like gets dropped or whatever. Like, I have full faith that this is going to survive a drop or two. The next palette here is also one that I brought traveling on my last trip, and this is the Sugar Drizzle Trash palette. I think this is beautiful. I love the all shimmer palettes from Sugar Drizzle. I think they're really, really nice, and I particularly love this one because I like the color selection in this. I think this is a beautiful palette, and I like how light a lot of these shimmers are. I used a lot of these as just like a one and done kind of look with some mattes in the crease, but like just having one shimmer on the lid, I would just pick one of these and be good to go. The lasting power is really nice on them. I think it's just a beautiful palette overall. I don't have any complaints, and I also love the front. I think it's so cute. Okay, let's move on to the little 6-pan that I was talking about. This one I also brought traveling, and there was something so special about this that I didn't think that I would like as much as I do, but this is the holographic all shimmer palette from Sugar Drizzle. Like, there's no way that anything that I do is going to do these any justice, but just trust me when I say that these in real life are so sparkly and so unique and so unlike any other shimmers that I own. And like I said, they are that kind of holographic, it's hard to explain, but they almost have a bit of like a gray base to them, but then the sparkles are all different colors, and when you get a glimpse of it in daylight, they just like sparkle so bright, and they're so just unique, and I really love them. I think they're absolutely stunning, and I can see myself bringing this everywhere I go because it's so small. I like how compact it is. I like that I can just bring it with me, and it's super easy, and like maybe I use it, maybe I don't, but if I didn't, it didn't take up any room at all, and if I did, I loved it. So I'm just really happy that I have that one. The palette that ended up on top is not going to come as a surprise to anybody because, of course, it's a new Blend Bunny palette. I mean, duh. Like, you saw my video with this. I was sad when I couldn't play with this anymore because I had such a good time with this. There is absolutely not a single thing I would change. Not a single thing. I think it's perfect. That's all I'm gonna say. I think the color story is so nice. These colors are so me. I love everything about this. I love the shimmers. I love the mattes. I like that there are only 5 shimmers, and I feel like they did a good job narrowing it down to only 5 shimmers that go with everything in this palette. So I think it's a perfect palette, and I just could not be happier to have this in my collection. And I think this is definitely coming with me next time I go somewhere because I want to use it again, and I want to use it again ASAP. So that's going to be my ranking. Are you surprised by any of these? Do you have any of these palettes? Would you have ranked any of these differently? Do you like any of the palettes that I didn't like? And vice versa? Let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts because I like hearing how other people feel about the same palettes that I own, and I know a lot of you guys have a lot of these palettes as well because, you know, I read my comment sections. I know that you guys have very similar preferences to what I do when it comes to makeup, which is probably why you watch me, so that makes perfect sense. If you want to see some more ranking videos, I of course have a playlist. I'll put that right there. And if you're new, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.